Rain had been falling since morning, the kind of cold October drizzle that seeps into your bones and makes you question every decision you've ever made. I pulled into the driveway at 6:47 p.m., later than usual because of a meeting that ran long, and sat in my car for a moment watching the water streak down the windshield. Our house looked warm from here. Golden light spilled from the kitchen windows where I knew Victoria would be starting dinner. 11 years of marriage. 11 years of coming home to this woman. I grabbed my briefcase and made the short dash to the mailbox, fishing out the usual stack. Bills, a catalog Victoria would flip through once and recycle, some junk about refinancing our mortgage. And then my fingers touched something different. A plain white envelope, my name typed across the front in a generic font. No return address. I tucked it under my arm with the rest and jogged to the front door, shaking rain from my jacket as I stepped inside. "That you?" Victoria called from the kitchen. "No, it's the other husband," I called back, the joke we'd been making for years. She laughed, and I smiled at the sound of it as I dropped the mail on the hallway table and hung up my jacket. The house smelled like garlic and rosemary. She was making the roasted chicken I loved. I sorted through the mail quickly, setting aside the bills, and my hand paused on that white envelope again. Something about it bothered me. Maybe the plainness of it, the anonymity. I slid my finger under the flap and pulled out a single sheet of paper. One sentence. Blue ink. Careful handwriting. "Your wife isn't who she seems to be. Ask about Cleveland." No signature, no explanation. Just those 12 words that meant absolutely nothing to me. I read it twice, then a third time. Cleveland? Victoria had mentioned living in Ohio before we met, but Cleveland specifically? I couldn't remember her ever talking about it. "Grant, dinner's almost ready." I folded the letter, slipped it back into the envelope, and walked into the kitchen. Victoria stood at the stove, stirring something in a pot, her dark hair pulled back in a loose ponytail. She was still in her work clothes, a silk blouse and fitted slacks, and she looked beautiful in the warm light. "Hey," I said, kissing her cheek. "Smells amazing. New recipe, found it on that food blog I like." She glanced at the envelope in my hand. "What's that?" I hesitated for half a second, just half a second, before handing it to her. "Came in the mail today, no return address. Pretty weird." She took it, pulled out the letter, and read it. I watched her face carefully. 11 years of marriage, and I knew every expression this woman had. The way her nose crinkled when she laughed. The slight furrow between her brows when she was concentrating. The softening around her eyes when she looked at me. What I saw now was nothing. Her face was neutral. Perfectly, absolutely neutral. Like she was reading a weather report for a city she'd never visit. "Some kind of psycho," she said, and her voice was casual. Too casual. She handed it back to me with a little shrug. "Probably got the wrong address or something." "Cleveland, though," I said. "You lived in Ohio. Ring any bells?" "I lived in Columbus and Dayton. Never spent any real time in Cleveland." She turned back to the stove. "Honestly, I'd throw it away. Don't give whoever sent it the satisfaction of wondering about it." She was right. Logically, she was right. Some crank with too much time, some wrong address, some bizarre mistake. I should crumple it up and forget about it. But I couldn't stop looking at her back as she stirred the pot. The set of her shoulders. The way she didn't turn around. A normal person, a person with nothing to hide, would have questions. Who sent this? Why would someone say that? What does Cleveland mean? A normal person would be curious, maybe a little freaked out. They'd want to puzzle through it together. Victoria just wanted it thrown away. I walked to the trash can and dropped the envelope in, watching it settle among coffee grounds and vegetable scraps. "Done," I said. "Forgotten." She turned and smiled at me, and it looked like her real smile, and I told myself I was being paranoid. I couldn't sleep that night. Victoria lay beside me, her breathing slow and even, her body curved toward me the way it always was. I stared at the ceiling and replayed the kitchen scene in my mind. Her neutral expression, her lack of curiosity, the quick dismissal. Ask about Cleveland. At 2:14 a.m., I eased out of bed and padded downstairs in the dark. The kitchen was cold, the remains of our dinner cleaned and put away hours ago. I lifted the lid of the trash can and retrieved the envelope, smoothing it flat on the counter. The handwriting nagged at me. There was something familiar about it, something I couldn't quite place. The slant of the letters, the way the T's were crossed with a slight upward tick at the end. I stood there in the dark kitchen, and a memory surfaced. The grocery list Victoria had left on the refrigerator last week. I'd teased her about her handwriting, the way it leaned to the right like it was in a hurry to get somewhere. The list was still there, held by a magnet shaped like a seashell from our anniversary trip to Florida. I pulled it down and carried both pieces of paper to the window, where moonlight filtered through the clouds. I held them side by side. The slant was the same. The T's were crossed the same way, with that distinctive upward tick. The lowercase a's had the same round, open shape. My wife had written this letter. She had written it, addressed it to me, mailed it to our house, and then pretended to be surprised when I showed it to her. She had laughed about crazy stalkers and told me to throw it away. I stood in my kitchen at 2:30 in the morning, holding evidence of something I couldn't begin to understand, and I felt the ground shift beneath my feet. Why would a woman anonymously warn her husband about herself? I put the grocery list back on the refrigerator. I hid the letter in my briefcase, and I went back upstairs and lay down next to my wife, watching her breathe, wondering who the hell she really was. The weekend was torture. Every interaction felt loaded now. Every word she said filtered through the lens of what I'd discovered. I watched her the way an engineer watches a structure for signs of stress. Carefully, methodically, looking for cracks. And I found them. Saturday morning, she checked her phone and angled the screen away from me, just slightly, just enough that I couldn't see it. I'd never noticed that before. Had she always done it? Or was I just paying attention now? Saturday afternoon, she went to the gym. Her usual Saturday session, she said. 2 hours of yoga and spin class. I watched her drive away and then stood at the window, wondering if she was really going where she said she was going. Sunday evening, her phone rang while we were watching a movie. "Work," she said, glancing at the screen. "I need to take this." She went to the guest room and closed the door. I heard her voice, muffled, the words indistinct. She was in there for 20 minutes. Was this normal? Had she always had calls like this? I couldn't remember. 11 years of marriage, and suddenly, I couldn't remember what was normal and what wasn't. That night, after she fell asleep, I made a decision. My colleague Rick had used a private investigator during his custody battle last year, a guy he said was thorough and discreet. I'd kept the business card, stuck in a drawer with old receipts and warranty paperwork. I found it in the dark, memorized the number, and programmed it into my phone under HVAC repair. I wasn't going to confront Victoria. Not yet. If she wanted me to know something, she would have told me directly, not through an anonymous letter she then pretended not to have written. Whatever game she was playing, I wasn't going to stumble through it blind. I'm a structural engineer. I don't panic, I don't react, I analyze, I plan, and then I act. Ask about Cleveland. I was going to find out exactly what there was to ask about. The following Monday, I left work at lunch and drove to a strip mall on the other side of town. The office was wedged between a nail salon and a tax preparation service, the kind of place you'd never notice unless you were looking for it. The sign on the door said, "Cross Investigations," in plain black letters. Nathan Cross was not what I expected. I'd been picturing some television cliché, trench coat, world-weary stare, flask in the desk drawer. Instead, I found a fit guy in his early 50s with graying temples and the calm demeanor of someone who'd seen enough human weakness that nothing surprised him anymore. "Mr. Holloway," he said, shaking my hand. "Have a seat. Tell me what brought you here." I sat across from his desk and laid out the whole thing. The letter, the handwriting match, Victoria's strange reaction, everything I'd observed over the weekend. Nathan listened without interrupting, making occasional notes on a yellow legal pad. When I finished, he set down his pen and looked at me with something like curiosity. "I've been doing this for 30 years, he said. "I've seen a lot of things. Cheating spouses, hidden bank accounts, secret families. But I've never seen someone warn their spouse about themselves. That's a new one. That's why I'm here. I need to understand what's going on before I react." He nodded slowly. "Smart. Most people in your position would already be screaming at their wives and throwing things. The fact that you came here first tells me you're thinking clearly." He picked up his pen again. "What do you want to know?" "Everything. Her life before we met. Anything connected to Cleveland. And..." I hesitated. "If there's anything going on now that I should know about. Anything current." "You're asking me to investigate your wife's past and her present." "Yes." He named his fee, $150 an hour plus expenses, and I didn't blink. I would have paid 10 times that for the truth. "I'll need full name, date of birth, social security if you have it, current employer, any previous addresses you know about," he said. "The more you give me, the faster I can work." I gave him everything I had: her maiden name, Bishop, her birthday, her employer, a medical device company, the cities she'd mentioned living in, Dayton, Columbus, Austin, where we met. "And Cleveland?" he asked. "That's what I need you to find out." Nathan worked fast. By Wednesday, he had a preliminary report. "Victoria Bishop," he read from his notes when I returned to his office. "Born in Dayton, Ohio. Attended Ohio State University, graduated with a business degree, worked in Columbus for a few years after graduation, then moved to Austin at age 28. That's where she met you." That's what she told me. "It all checks out. No criminal record. Credit history is clean. Employment history matches what you know." He paused, tapping his pen against the legal pad. "But there's a gap." "What kind of gap?" "Digital footprint, social media, check-ins, photos online. Pretty much everyone has some trail from their 20s. Your wife has nothing from ages 22 to 27. 5 years where she's basically invisible online." Maybe she wasn't into social media back then. A lot of people weren't. Nathan shook his head slowly. "I considered that. But it's not just social media. It's everything. No apartment leases in her name during that period. No utility bills. No car registrations. She lives somewhere, did something, but there's almost no paper trail." He leaned forward. "In my experience, when someone's that invisible for that long, it's usually because they're hiding from something, or hiding something, or just living with family and not generating much documentation. Sure, that's possible." He didn't sound convinced. "But then there's this." He slid a printout across the desk. "I found this in a Cleveland Plain dealer archive from 15 years ago. Engagement announcement." I looked at the faded scan. A young couple smiling at the camera. The woman was clearly Victoria, younger, her hair styled differently, her face softer somehow, but unmistakably her. She was beaming at the camera with an expression I'd seen 1,000 times. The man beside her was tall, dark-haired, handsome in a conventional way. "Victoria Bishop of Dayton and Elliot Reeves of Cleveland Heights are pleased to announce their engagement. The couple met at Ohio State University and plan a June wedding." "She was engaged before," I said. The words came out flat, matter of fact, even though something was crumbling inside me. You didn't know. She never mentioned it. Not once in 11 years. We talked about past relationships when we were dating. The way you do, getting to know each other. She mentioned a few boyfriends, nothing serious. She said she'd never really been in love before me. I looked up at Nathan. She said that on our wedding night. Nathan's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his eyes. Sympathy, maybe, or recognition. He'd probably heard 100 stories like this. Everyone has a past, he said. Some people just work harder to bury it. But why? Why hide an engagement? It's not like being engaged before is some shameful thing. Half the people I know were engaged to someone else before they met their spouse. That's the question, isn't it? Why hide something that shouldn't need hiding? He pulled out another sheet of paper. This announcement ran in September, 15 years ago. The wedding was supposed to happen the following June. But there's no record of a marriage. Not in Ohio, not anywhere else I can find. So they broke up. Or something else happened. Nathan set down his pen and fixed me with a steady look. What happened to Elliot Reeves? That's what I'm working on now. I should have more by Friday. He paused. You sure you want to keep going down this road? Whatever I find, you can't unfind it. I thought about Victoria sleeping peacefully beside me each night. The letter hidden in my briefcase. The way she'd smiled at me over dinner like nothing was wrong. The way she'd looked at me on our wedding night and lied through her teeth about never having been in love before. I want to know, I said. All of it. Friday evening, my phone buzzed with a text from HVAC Repair. Found something about the fiancé. It's not good. Call me. I was at home, Victoria in the kitchen making dinner. I told her I needed to take a work call and stepped out to the backyard, the October chill biting through my shirt. Nathan answered on the second ring. You sitting down? Just tell me. Elliot Reeves died 15 years ago. Car accident on November 15th. Single vehicle, wrapped around a tree on an icy road outside Cleveland. I felt a strange mixture of relief and dread. An accident was sad, but it explained why Victoria never talked about him. Losing a fiancé would be traumatic. Some people never mentioned they're dead. That's not the bad part, Nathan continued. Victoria was in the car. She was the passenger. That's what the official report says. Minor injuries, released from the hospital the same night. She gave a statement saying Elliot had swerved to avoid a deer, lost control on the ice. Okay. Except she wasn't the passenger, Grant. She was driving. The backyard suddenly felt colder. How do you know? Blood alcohol came back at .11 for Victoria. Elliot was stone cold sober. .00. Now tell me, why would a sober man let his intoxicated fiancé drive on an icy night? He wouldn't. No, he wouldn't. And that's just the beginning. I heard Nathan shuffling papers. Multiple witnesses saw them switch places before police arrived. 2 people in a house nearby heard the crash, looked out their window. They saw a woman, matching Victoria's description, get out from behind the wheel and go around to the passenger side. A few minutes later, the cops showed up, and suddenly she was the grieving passenger and Elliot was the negligent driver. You're saying she moved his body? The witnesses said he was still moving when they saw her get out. He wasn't dead yet. He died either during the switch or shortly after, in the passenger seat where she'd dragged him. I closed my eyes. You're sure about this? The retired cop who worked the scene, guy named Henderson, been living off his pension in Florida. I bought him a few beers and he remembered the whole thing. Said everyone knew she was driving but nothing ever happened. Evidence got mishandled. Witness statements got delayed. The blood alcohol results disappeared from the file for almost a week, and by the time they surfaced, the case had already been ruled an accident with Elliot at fault. How is that possible? Her father, Daniel Bishop, County Prosecutor's Office. Golf buddies with everyone who mattered. Henderson said the fix was in before the sun came up the next morning. Victoria was never charged, never even officially questioned as a suspect. The whole thing got buried. My wife had killed a man. She'd been drunk behind the wheel, crashed the car, killed her fiancé, and then moved his dying body to avoid prosecution. She'd let her father's connections bury the truth. And then she'd moved to Texas, met me, married me, and built a whole new life on top of that grave. "There's more," Nathan said. "Of course there is." She filed an insurance claim afterward. Personal injury, medical expenses, about 40 grand total. Listed herself as the passenger, collected the payout as a victim of the accident. If she was really driving, that's not just leaving the scene and obstruction. That's insurance fraud. Criminal offense. Statute of limitations? Complicated. Depends on when exactly she filed, whether there was ongoing fraud, which state's laws apply since she's moved around. Could be expired, could be still actionable. Would need a lawyer to sort it out. I stood in my backyard, the phone pressed to my ear, and tried to reconcile the woman I married with the woman Nathan was describing. A killer. A liar. A fraud. Someone who'd watched her fiancé die, might have caused his death directly, and then spent 15 years pretending none of it ever happened. "Why now?" I said, more to myself than to him. Why would she send me that letter after 15 years of silence? That's the question I can't answer. Something triggered this. Something's happening in her life that's making her conscience crack. He paused. Or someone. Someone. I think we need to look at what's going on now, not just the past. Where does she go when she says she's at work? Who is she seeing? What's she doing that made her suddenly want to confess, anonymously, to her own husband? "Do it," I said. "Whatever it takes. I want to know everything." For the next 2 weeks, Nathan followed my wife. I went through the motions of normal life, work, dinner, conversation, while every minute of every day, a private investigator was documenting Victoria's movements. It felt surreal. Sitting across from her at breakfast, passing the orange juice, asking about her plans for the day, knowing that a man with a telephoto lens would be watching her live out those plans in real time. She was careful. She went to work, came home at normal hours, texted me when she was running late. Nothing obviously suspicious, except for Tuesdays and Thursdays. Nathan's report landed in my inbox on a Friday morning, and I read it in my car before going into the office. Tuesday and Thursday. Gym sessions. Subject does not go to gym. Subject proceeds to Harrington Hotel downtown. Arrives approximately 6:15 p.m. Enters through lobby, proceeds to elevators. Same room, verified as room 714. Remains approximately 90 minutes. Male subject meets her there. Photos were attached. Victoria entering the hotel lobby. Victoria stepping into an elevator. And then a photo of a man, tall, fit, mid-40s, expensive watch, walking through the same lobby 10 minutes later. Male subject identified via vehicle registration. Black Range Rover, license plate, redacted. Vehicle registered to Tyler Reeves. I stared at the name for a full minute before the connection hit me. Reeves, like Elliot Reeves, the dead fiancé. I called Nathan. "Tyler Reeves, is he related to?" "Brother, younger brother." I confirmed it this morning. I felt the world tilt sideways. My wife was having an affair with the brother of the man she killed. "What are the odds of that?" I said. "Zero," Nathan replied. "The odds are zero. This isn't a coincidence, Grant. This is intentional." "But why? Is he blackmailing her? Does she know who he is?" "That's what I'm going to find out." Over the next week, Nathan dug into Tyler Reeves with the same methodical thoroughness he'd applied to Victoria. Tyler was 45, a financial advisor at a mid-size firm downtown. Married to a woman named Brooke, 2 teenage kids, nice house in the suburbs. Church on Sundays. youth soccer on Saturdays. The picture-perfect family man. But there were cracks. His firm had been investigated 2 years ago for irregularities in client fund management. He was never charged, but his reputation took a hit. His client list had shrunk noticeably since then. More importantly, his brother's death had destroyed his family. His father drank himself to death 3 years after the accident. His mother retreated to Florida, bitter and isolated. Tyler was 30 when Elliot died. He'd had 15 years to think about the woman who walked away unpunished. "I think I know what's happening here," Nathan said when we met again. "Tyler found Victoria. He seduced her, and he's documenting everything." "For what?" "Revenge, blackmail, maybe both. He wants to destroy her the way she destroyed his family." "Does his wife know?" "Doubt it, but that's leverage you might be able to use." I sat back in my chair and processed this new reality. My wife was a killer who'd escaped justice. The man she was sleeping with was the brother of her victim, executing a long-planned revenge operation. She didn't know who he really was. She was a guilty woman caught in a trap designed specifically for her. But none of that changed the fact that she had lied to me for 11 years. None of that changed the fact that she was crawling into bed with another man every Tuesday and Thursday while I sat at home thinking she was doing yoga. "What do I do with this?" I asked. "That's not my department," Nathan said. "My job is to find the truth. What you do with it is up to you." Nathan's breakthrough came 3 weeks after I'd first walked into his office. "Tyler's been careless," he said over the phone. "Uses a cloud backup that syncs across devices. His teenage son's iPad has automatic access. I found a way to look at some of his files." "I don't want to know how." "Smart. What you do want to know is what's on them." He sent me a secure link to a folder. I opened it on my laptop, alone in my home office with the door locked, and felt my stomach turn. Hundreds of photos of Victoria. Candid shots, hotel room shots, intimate moments captured without her knowledge. Text message screenshots, flirtatious, explicit, damning. Voice recordings of her laughing, confessing, sharing secrets. Video clips of her talking about her past, her guilt, things she'd never told me. And then there were the documents. Tyler had assembled a complete file on the Cleveland accident. Witness statements. Blood alcohol reports. Photos of the crash scene. Insurance paperwork showing Victoria's fraudulent claim. A detailed timeline proving she was behind the wheel. Everything he would need to destroy her. I found a text thread between Tyler and someone labeled only as J that spelled out his endgame. "I've been planning this for 3 years. Found her on social media 5 years ago. Made contact at that networking event. The affair started 18 months ago. Every time we meet, I get a little more. She has no idea who I am. She thinks I'm just some guy who finds her attractive. And then, she took everything from me. My brother, my father, my mother's sanity. I'm taking everything from her. I'm going to send it all to her husband, her employer, the state bar, the local news. I'm going to burn her life to the ground and watch her choke on the ashes." I closed my laptop and sat in the dark for a long time. Here was the thing I hadn't expected. I felt something close to sympathy for Tyler Reeves. Not much, but something. He was a grieving brother who'd watched his family disintegrate because a drunk woman killed his sibling and walked away free. His methods were repugnant, but his motivation made a terrible kind of sense. And Victoria? She was the target of a revenge operation, yes. She was being used and manipulated by a man she trusted. But she had earned every bit of what was coming to her. She had killed Elliot Reeves. She had committed insurance fraud. She had lied to me for over a decade. And she was cheating on me, right now, regardless of who her lover really was. I had a choice to make. I could warn her. Expose Tyler, tell her the truth, give her a chance to protect herself. But that would make me her ally, her partner in surviving this. And why should I be? She had never been honest with me. She didn't deserve my protection. I could let Tyler complete his revenge, sit back, do nothing, and watch him burn her down. There was a certain justice in that, but it would mean losing control of the situation. Tyler would decide the timing, the method, the fallout, and he might expose things I'd rather keep private, like the fact that I'd known about the affair and done nothing. Or I could take control myself, gather the evidence, understand all the players, and then decide, on my own terms, what happened next. I chose option 3. If anyone was going to decide what happened to my wife, it was going to be me. I walked into Tyler Reeves' office on a Tuesday afternoon without an appointment. His firm was on the 17th floor of a glass tower downtown, the kind of building that's designed to impress, all chrome and polished marble and receptionists with perfect smiles. I gave my name, said I was interested in discussing investment opportunities, and waited in a leather chair that probably cost more than my first car. 10 minutes later, a young woman in a tailored suit escorted me to Tyler's corner office. Floor-to-ceiling windows, mahogany desk, diplomas, and awards arranged on the wall with careful precision. The office of a man who wanted you to know he'd succeeded. Tyler rose to greet me, tall, fit, expensive suit, the exact man I'd seen in Nathan's photos, and extended his hand with a practiced smile. "Mr. Holloway, I'm Tyler Reeves. Please, have a seat." His assistant offered coffee. I declined. She left, closing the door behind her. Tyler settled into his chair, still smiling. "So, my assistant mentioned you're interested in discussing investment opportunities. What kind of portfolio are we looking at?" "We need to talk," I said. "About Victoria." The smile froze on his face. For a moment, he didn't move. I watched the calculation happen behind his eyes, the rapid assessment of what I might know, what I might not know, how much danger he was in. "I'm sorry," he said slowly. "Victoria who?" "Don't?" I leaned forward. "I know who you are. I know what you've been doing. I know about the hotel on Tuesdays and Thursdays. I know about the photos and the recordings and the files you've been building. I know about Cleveland, about Elliot, about all of it. So let's skip the part where you pretend to be confused and have an actual conversation." The blood drained from his face. 3 years of planning. 18 months of carefully cultivated intimacy. His entire strategy depended on remaining invisible, on being nothing more than a charming stranger who'd wandered into Victoria's life. And now I was sitting in his office, calmly dismantling everything he'd built. "How did you—" He stopped, swallowed. "Who told you? Does it matter? The point is I know. The question is what we're going to do about it." Tyler's jaw tightened. Some of the shock was fading now, replaced by something harder. "If you're here to threaten me, I'm here to talk. Like two adults who both have something the other one wants. I don't want anything from you." "Really? Because from where I'm sitting, your whole plan just fell apart. You've spent 3 years seducing my wife for revenge. I've spent 6 weeks understanding why. Now I'm the one holding all the cards, and you're the one scrambling." He stared at me for a long moment, his fingers drumming against the armrest of his chair. I could see him reassessing, recalculating. This wasn't the confrontation he'd prepared for. In his mind, I was supposed to be a clueless husband who'd never see anything coming. "She told you," he said finally. "That's the only way you could know all this. Victoria figured out who I was and told you everything." "Victoria has no idea who you really are. She thinks you're just some guy who got bored and stopped calling. She's been moping around the house for weeks, wondering what she did wrong." "Then how—" "I hired someone, a professional. He dug into Victoria's past, found Cleveland, found Elliot. And once I knew about the dead fiancé, it wasn't hard to find out about the surviving brother." I smiled without warmth. You weren't as careful as you thought. Tyler pushed back from his desk and stood, moving to the window. He stared out at the city for a long moment, his back to me. She killed my brother, he said quietly. Do you understand that? She was drunk. She was driving. She crashed the car and then... His voice cracked. Elliot was still alive after the impact. The witnesses said he was moving. She dragged him out of the driver's seat, put him in the passenger side, and let him die there. And then her daddy made some phone calls and the whole thing disappeared. I know. She walked away. No charges, no trial, nothing. She moved to Texas and got a new job and met you and had a nice life while my family fell apart. He turned to face me. My father drank himself to death 3 years after the accident. Blamed himself for not protecting Elliot, for not getting justice. My mother moved to Florida and barely talks to anyone anymore. I was 30 years old when my brother died, and I watched everything I loved crumble because that woman got away with murder. I'm not unsympathetic to that. What she did was monstrous. Then you understand why I'm doing this. I understand your reasons. I don't accept your methods. I stood and walked toward him, slowly, deliberately. You don't get to decide what happens to my wife. I do. She's not just your wife. She's my brother's killer. And she's been my wife for 11 years. She lied to me every single day of that marriage. She built our entire life on a foundation of deception. Whatever debt she owes for Elliot's death, she owes me something too. And I'm going to be the one who collects. Tyler shook his head. I've been planning this for years. I have everything I need to destroy her. Photos, recordings, documents, enough to ruin her career, her reputation, her entire life. I'm not walking away from that. Then I destroy you first. Excuse me? I pulled my phone from my pocket and played a recording. Tyler's voice, captured from one of his own hotel room sessions with Victoria, talking about how he'd been moving client funds around to cover a bad investment decision. Pillow talk she probably didn't even remember, but clear enough to end his career. Tyler's face went gray. Where did you get that? Same place I got everything else. You really should have been more careful about your cloud backups. I put the phone away. I also have records of at least 6 other women you've had affairs with in the past 5 years. 2 of them were clients. Your firm would be very interested in that. So would your wife. So would the Financial Services Licensing Board. You're bluffing. Want to find out? Silence stretched between us. I could hear traffic from far below, the muted hum of the building's air conditioning, the tick of an expensive clock on Tyler's desk. What do you want? He finally asked. Everything. Every file, every photo, every recording, the whole package you've been building. And then you disappear from Victoria's life. You end the affair, tell her you're recommitting to your family or you're moving away, whatever story you want to tell. But you never contact her again. And if I refuse? Then I send what I have to your wife, your firm, and the licensing board. Simultaneously. Tomorrow morning. Your career ends, your marriage ends, and you spend the next 10 years trying to dig yourself out of the rubble. I met his eyes. Your choice. He turned back to the window. I watched his shoulders rise and fall with a deep breath. I want something in return, he said. You're not in a position to negotiate. I want her to suffer. He turned to face me, and his eyes were wet. I don't care how you do it. I don't care what methods you use, but she doesn't get to walk away from this unscathed. Promise me that, and I'll give you everything. I thought about the woman I'd married. The woman I'd loved for 11 years. The woman who'd been lying to me since the day we met. She won't walk away, I said. I promise you that. Tyler walked to his desk, opened a drawer, and pulled out a thumb drive. He held it for a moment, looking at it, and I could see 15 years of grief and rage written on his face. Everything's on here, he said, handing it over. Photos, texts, recordings, documents. My entire file on her. 3 years of work. I took the drive and slipped it into my pocket. End it with her by Thursday. If I find out you've contacted her again after that, our deal is off. She'll want an explanation. Make something up. Tell her you had a crisis of conscience. Tell her your wife found out. I don't care what you say, as long as it's convincing and final. I walked to the door, then paused with my hand on the handle. Your brother didn't deserve what happened to him. Neither did your family. For what it's worth, I'm sorry for your loss. Tyler didn't respond. He just stood at the window, staring out at nothing, looking smaller than he had when I'd walked in. I closed the door behind me and walked out through the gleaming lobby, the thumb drive warm in my pocket. I had everything I needed now. Every piece of the puzzle, every weapon in the arsenal. All that was left was deciding when and how to use them. For the next 2 months, I prepared. I met with the best divorce attorney in the city, a woman named Sandra, who had a reputation for ruthlessness that was apparently well-earned. I brought her the evidence, explained the situation, and watched her eyebrows rise incrementally as the story unfolded. This is unusual, she said when I finished. The infidelity is straightforward. The Cleveland situation is more complicated. What about the prenup? She pulled out the document and studied it. Victoria and I had signed a prenuptial agreement before our wedding. My idea, after watching Rick's first divorce turn ugly. The infidelity clause was clear. If either party engaged in extramarital relations, they forfeited their claim to assets acquired during the marriage. This is enforceable, Sandra said. With the evidence you have, she won't be able to fight it. What does that mean practically? It means she walks away with her personal accounts and half of anything you purchased together before the marriage. Everything else, the house, your retirement accounts, the investments, stays with you. I nodded. That was what I wanted. At night, I lay next to Victoria and watched her sleep. She'd been different since Tyler ended things with her. Quieter, more distant. She didn't know I'd orchestrated it. She thought he'd simply lost interest, and some part of her was grieving the loss of whatever illusion she'd built around the affair. I didn't feel guilty about any of it. That surprised me. I'd expected to feel something. Anger, sadness, betrayal. But mostly what I felt was clarity. The woman beside me was a stranger. The life we'd built was a fiction. And now that I understood that, I could see the path forward with perfect precision. I picked a date for the confrontation. November 15th. The anniversary of Elliot Reeves's death. There was a certain poetry in that, a symmetry that appealed to my engineer's brain. Victoria had escaped consequences for 15 years. On the anniversary of the day she'd killed a man, that escape would end. I made reservations at our favorite restaurant, the Italian place downtown where we'd celebrated anniversaries and promotions, where we'd first said, "I love you" over tiramisu and too much wine. Victoria was pleased when I suggested it. We haven't had a proper date night in months, she said, smiling at me as she put on her earrings. Is there an occasion I'm forgetting? Does there need to be an occasion? I suppose not. She kissed my cheek. This is nice. You've seemed distracted lately. I was starting to wonder if everything was okay. Everything's fine, I said. I just wanted a special night with my wife. The restaurant was warm and candlelit, exactly as I remembered. We ordered wine, her favorite, a bold red from Napa, and she talked about her week while I listened and nodded in the right places. The couple at the next table laughed at something, their voices happy and oblivious. After our entrees arrived, I reached into my jacket and pulled out a manila folder. I set it on the table between us. What's that? Victoria asked. I need to tell you something. Her face shifted, wariness flickering behind her eyes. Okay. I opened the folder and slid out the first photo. Her and Tyler entering the Harrington Hotel. Recognize this? Victoria's wine glass stopped halfway to her lips. Grant, how about this one? I slid out another photo. The two of them in the hotel room, fully clothed but clearly intimate. Or this? A screenshot of a text exchange, her words explicit and damning. Where did you get these? Her voice had gone thin and high. I've had a private investigator following you for the past 3 months. I know about the affair. I know about the hotel on Tuesdays and Thursdays. I know about Tyler Reeves. At his name, something happened to her face, a flash of confusion. What about Tyler? I pulled out the next document. The engagement announcement from the Cleveland Plain dealer, 15 years old. Her face, younger but unmistakable, smiling beside a man named Elliot Reeves. You never mentioned you were engaged before me, I said. You never mentioned Cleveland. You never mentioned Elliot. She stared at the announcement. That was a long time ago. It didn't seem relevant. No. What about this? I slid out the accident report. The blood alcohol levels. The witness statements describing how they'd seen a woman move from behind the wheel before police arrived. You killed him, Victoria. You were driving drunk, you crashed the car, and you killed your fiancé. Then you switched places with his body and let your father cover the whole thing up. That's not... I didn't... She was crying now, tears spilling down her cheeks, her mascara starting to run. You don't understand. It was an accident. I was scared. I was 25 years old and I was terrified, and I didn't know what to do. So you let a dying man take the blame for you. Elliot was already... The paramedics said he died on impact. The witnesses say he was still moving when they got there. The retired cop who worked the scene told my investigator that everyone knew you were driving, but nobody could prove it because your daddy made it all go away. Victoria buried her face in her hands. The couple at the next table was staring now, their happy evening ruined by our drama. I didn't care. And Tyler, I continued, did you know who he was? Did you know he was Elliot's brother? Her head snapped up. What? Tyler Reeves, the man you've been sleeping with for 18 months. He's Elliot's younger brother. He found you 5 years ago and spent 3 years planning this. The networking event where you met him, the affair, all of it, designed to get you to trust him so he could document everything and destroy your life. Victoria's face went white. That's not... He couldn't have... He has everything. Photos, recordings, documents. He was planning to send it all. To your employer, to the Ohio bar, to the news. He wanted to burn you the way you burned his family. Oh God. She was shaking now, her whole body trembling. Oh God. Oh God. I found out before he could do it. I confronted him. I have all his files now. Hope flickered in her eyes. Pathetic, desperate hope. You stopped him? You protected me? I protected myself, I said. And now, I'm ending this. I reached into my jacket and pulled out the envelope. Set it on the table in front of her. Her name was printed neatly on the front. What is this? Open it. She did, with shaking hands. Pulled out the papers inside. Read the first page. Looked up at me with dawning horror. Divorce papers? Happy anniversary, Victoria. November 15th. The day Elliot Reeves died. I thought you should remember. For a moment, she just stared at me. Then she laughed. A sharp, bitter sound that had no humor in it. You planned this. You sat on all of this for months, and you planned this for the anniversary of the day you killed a man and walked away. Yes, I did. She stared at the papers in her hands. Then she looked up at me, and her expression had hardened into something I'd never seen before. I'm not signing these. You will. The prenup is ironclad. Infidelity clause, remember? I have documented evidence of an 18-month affair. You can fight this in court if you want, but it'll cost you more than you'll recover. You bastard! Her voice was quiet now, controlled. You cold, calculating bastard. I learned from the best. I stood up, dropped enough cash on the table to cover dinner and a generous tip, and looked at my wife one last time. She was crying again, silent tears tracking through her ruined makeup, the divorce papers clutched in her hands like something dead. Goodbye, Victoria. I walked out of the restaurant without looking back. The divorce was brutal, even with the prenup. Victoria hired her own attorney, a pit bull from Houston named Diane Weatherby, who charged $800 an hour and had a reputation for turning ugly divorces into bloodbaths. She tried every angle to invalidate our agreement. She claimed duress, said I'd pressured her into signing just days before the wedding. She claimed she hadn't understood what she was signing, that the legal language was deliberately obfuscating. She claimed I'd misrepresented my assets at the time of our marriage, that I'd hidden income and investments. None of it stuck. The prenup had been drafted by a reputable firm. Victoria had been given 30 days to review it before signing. She'd been explicitly told to hire her own attorney, and she had. A woman named Patricia something, who'd made notes and suggested amendments, some of which had been incorporated. Everything was documented, witnessed, and notarized. There was no duress, no confusion, no hidden assets. The judge, a white-haired woman with no patience for theatrics, saw through Victoria's desperation and enforced the infidelity clause without hesitation. The terms of this agreement are clear, she said, reading from the document. Section 14A. In the event that either party engages in extramarital relations during the course of the marriage, as evidenced by documentary proof including, but not limited to photographs, video recordings, or sworn testimony, the offending party forfeits claim to assets acquired during the marriage. Victoria's attorney tried to argue that the evidence had been obtained illegally, that Nathan's methods constituted an invasion of privacy. The evidence was obtained by a licensed private investigator operating within the bounds of his profession, the judge replied. And even if we were to exclude some of it, we'd still have Mrs. Holloway's own text messages retrieved through legitimate means, which make her infidelity abundantly clear. Victoria sat at the defendant's table, staring at her hands, while the judge dismantled her last hope. She walked away with her personal accounts, maybe $80,000 total, and half the furniture we'd bought before the prenup went into effect. I kept the house, my retirement accounts, and the majority of our investments. 11 years of marriage reduced to a ledger of assets and debts. After the final hearing, her attorney approached me in the hallway. She was shorter than I'd expected, with sharp eyes and a handshake like a steel trap. My client wants you to know that you haven't heard the last of this, she said. Your client should focus on her other legal problems. She looked at me for a long moment, trying to read something in my face. You're cold, she said finally. Whatever she did to you, you're handling this like she's a business problem to be solved. Maybe that's what she always was. I walked away before she could respond. I'd kept my word to Tyler. Victoria didn't walk away unscathed. A few weeks after the divorce was finalized, an anonymous package arrived at the Ohio Attorney General's office. Copies of Victoria's insurance claim from 15 years ago, listing herself as a passenger. Documents showing she'd received a settlement for injuries sustained as a victim of the crash. The statute of limitations was complicated. Insurance fraud has different rules in different states, but there was enough to justify an investigation. Victoria was put on administrative leave from her job pending the outcome. The company didn't want the bad publicity. Word got out, as it always does. The cheating was one thing, sordid, but common enough. The Cleveland cover-up was something else entirely. Friends stopped calling. Colleagues distanced themselves. Her family closed ranks, but they were implicated too. Her father, the retired prosecutor, faced questions about his role in burying the original investigation. Victoria's life crumbled slowly, then all at once. Last I heard, she'd moved back to Ohio, was living with her mother, working some retail job while the investigation dragged on. She was 41 years old, alone, starting over with nothing. I tried to feel sorry for her. I couldn't. Tyler Reeves didn't fare much better. His wife found out about the affairs, not from me, but from one of the other women he'd been sleeping with. Brooke filed for divorce and took him for everything the prenup allowed. A few months later, a client complaint finally stuck, and Tyler lost his license. Last I heard, he'd moved to Arizona or New Mexico, trying to start over in a state where nobody knew his name. I didn't take pleasure in his destruction. Tyler was a villain, but he was also a grieving brother who'd watched his family disintegrate because of something Victoria did. His methods were despicable. His grief was real. I sold the house in January. Too many memories, too many lies embedded in the walls. The new buyers were a young couple expecting their first child, bright-eyed and optimistic, the way Victoria and I must have looked 11 years ago. I wondered if they'd be happier than we were. I wondered if they'd last. I moved to Denver in February. A friend from college worked at an engineering firm there and had been trying to recruit me for years. The timing finally felt right. New city, new job, new start. I rented an apartment with a view of the mountains and started over at 44. Dating was strange. I went through the motions, apps, setups from well-meaning friends, but I couldn't stop analyzing everyone I met. Looking for tells, searching for cracks. Every woman I talked to became a structure to be evaluated for hidden flaws. 6 months after moving to Denver, I received an unexpected piece of mail. A legal envelope, thick with documents. The return address was a law firm in Florida. Inside was a formal letter. Elliot and Tyler's mother had died. Cancer, according to the enclosed death certificate. She'd left a small bequest to me in her will, $5,000. A handwritten note was attached, the ink shaky with age. Mr. Holloway, I'm told you're the one who finally brought the truth to light about what happened to my son. For 15 years, I knew that woman had killed my Elliot, and for 15 years I watched her live her life unpunished. My husband died still hoping for justice. I didn't think I would live to see it. You gave an old woman peace. I don't know your reasons, and I don't need to. My son deserved the truth. You made sure he got it. God bless you. Margaret Reeves. I sat with the letter for a long time. I hadn't done any of this for Margaret Reeves. I hadn't done it for justice or truth or peace. I'd done it because lies are structural failures, and structures built on failures always collapse. Better to bring them down yourself than wait for them to fall on you. But if an old woman found comfort in believing otherwise, I wasn't going to correct her. I met Emily Walker at a friend's barbecue the following summer. She was 39, a pediatric nurse, divorced, no kids, pretty in a quiet way, with kind eyes and a laugh that made you want to hear it again. We talked for 3 hours that first night, about work, about life, about the strange paths that led us to Denver. On our third date, I told her about Victoria. All of it. The letter, the investigation, the affair, Cleveland, the divorce. I held nothing back. Emily listened without interrupting. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. That's a lot, she said finally. I know. I understand if it's too much. She shook her head. Everyone has a past. The question is whether you run from it or learn from it. She reached across the table and took my hand. You didn't run. You faced it. That takes courage. Or stubbornness. Maybe both, she smiled. Is there anything else I should know? Any other dead fiancés or revenge schemes I need to prepare for? I laughed. Really laughed. for the first time in what felt like years. No, that's it. That's all my baggage. Good, because I've got some of my own and I'd hate to be outmatched. We were engaged within a year. Last month, I was unpacking boxes in the house Emily and I just bought, a modest place in the suburbs, nothing fancy but ours, when I found an old photo I'd forgotten I still had. Me and Victoria, our wedding day. She was smiling at the camera, her eyes bright with happiness, beautiful in white lace. I was looking at her like she was the only woman in the world. I stared at the photo for a long time. Tried to remember what it felt like to be that man, that trusting, that naive. Tried to remember what it felt like to love her. Nothing. Just emptiness where the feeling used to be. I didn't know what had happened to Victoria since the investigation wrapped up. I didn't look her up. I didn't wonder. She was a closed chapter, a story with an ending I'd written myself. I carried the photo to the fireplace and struck a match. The flame caught the edge of the paper and spread quickly, consuming the image of my first wife, the stranger I'd married. Some things you can't just throw away. Some things you have to destroy. I watched the photo curl and blacken, watched our smiling faces disappear into ash. Emily came up behind me and wrapped her arms around my waist. What was that? Nothing, I said. Just clearing out some old junk. She didn't press. That was one of the things I loved about her. She knew when to ask questions and when to let things go. I swept the ashes into the fireplace and closed the grate. Then I turned to my fiancé, to my new life, to whatever came next. The past was gone. I'd made sure of that. All that was left was the future.